Nora Hale signed divorce papers on a Tuesday. By Friday, she learned her ex-husband was dead, or so the world believed. The man who broke her heart had become someone else entirely. Victor Rinaldi, head of Chicago's most dangerous crime family. Now he's back, offering millions with no strings attached, except one quiet request: a chance to sit across from her one more time. She thought grief was the worst thing they'd ever share. She was wrong. Because when the past refuses to stay buried, some reunions don't just break hearts, they detonate entire empires. If you're hooked, stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The law office smelled like old leather and promises no one intended to keep. Nora Hale sat in a chair that cost more than her monthly rent, watching rain streak down floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a Chicago she no longer recognized. The city had always been gray in winter, but lately it felt like the color had bled out of everything. The buildings, the sky, her own reflection in the glass. Sign here, and here. Initial at the bottom. The attorney's voice was clinical, efficient. He'd done this 1,000 times. Shepherded couples through the dismantling of their lives with the same detached professionalism a surgeon might use to remove a tumor. Clean, necessary, forgotten by the end of the day. Nora picked up the pen. Her hand didn't shake. That surprised her. 3 years ago, the thought of this moment would have destroyed her. 2 years ago, it would have felt like amputation. A year ago, she might have cried. Now, she just felt tired. The signature that had been hers for 6 years, Nora Hale, flowed across the page one final time. The ink was black, permanent, the kind of mark that didn't smudge or fade, no matter how much you might want it to. "Congratulations," the attorney said, sliding the papers into a folder. "You're officially divorced." Nora almost laughed. Congratulations. As if she'd accomplished something, as if the end of a marriage was a milestone worth celebrating. She stood, shouldered her bag, and walked out without another word. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. 43 floors, and every single one of them gave her too much time to think. About the apartment she'd have to herself now, about the bed that would stay cold on both sides, about the future she'd imagined that would never, ever happen. Stop it. She couldn't afford to spiral. Not today. Not when she had 3 clients waiting at the center, each one carrying wounds deeper than divorce papers could ever inflict. The community center where Nora worked sat in a neighborhood most people drove through with their doors locked. Cracked sidewalks, boarded-up storefronts, graffiti that changed weekly but never really disappeared. The building itself was a former church. High ceilings, stained glass windows that had been covered with plywood after the 3rd break-in, and a heating system that worked only when it felt like it. It was falling apart, and Nora loved it. "You're late!" Marissa, the director, stood in the doorway of her office with her arms crossed. She was 50-something, built like a fireplace, solid, warm, capable of burning you if you weren't careful. "How'd it go?" "It's done." Marissa's expression softened. "You okay?" "I'm fine." Nora shrugged off her coat, hung it on the rack by the door. "Who's first?" "Angela. She's in the counseling room. Brought her daughter." Nora nodded, already shifting gears. Angela was 19, trying to leave a boyfriend who didn't understand the word no. Her daughter was 3, too young to understand why they kept moving, why mommy cried at night, why they couldn't go home. This was the work that mattered. Not signatures on legal documents, not the past she couldn't change. Just the present, one crisis at a time, one person at a time. The session went long. They always did. By the time Angela left, holding her daughter's hand a little tighter, standing a little straighter, it was nearly 6. The center was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. Nora was packing up her desk when Marissa knocked on the doorframe. "Got a minute?" Something in her tone made Nora pause. Marissa didn't do small talk. If she wanted a minute, it was because something big was coming. "Sure, what's up?" Marissa stepped inside, closed the door. That was new. In 5 years, she'd never closed the door. "We got an offer today." Nora frowned. "What kind of offer?" "The kind that doesn't make sense." Marissa sat down, leaned forward with her elbows on her knees. "A private donor wants to fund the center, fully, for 10 years. The words hung in the air like smoke. Nora blinked. "What?" "Operational costs, salaries, programs, building repairs, everything." No strings. No oversight. Just a check every year for a decade. That's... Nora shook her head, trying to process. That's millions. Yeah. Who is it? Marissa's jaw tightened. That's the part that doesn't make sense. Marissa. He asked for you by name. The room tilted. Nora gripped the edge of her desk, her pulse suddenly loud in her ears. What do you mean, by name? The donor's attorney called me this afternoon, said his client wanted to make a substantial contribution to the center, but only if you stayed on staff. He specifically requested that you be the one to meet with him. That's insane. I know. Who is he? Marissa hesitated. Then she pulled a business card from her pocket and slid it across the desk. The name embossed in black letters made Nora's breath catch. Victor Rinaldi. She stared at it, read it again. Then a third time, because her brain refused to make sense of the syllables. Do you know him? Marissa asked quietly. Nora couldn't speak. Her mouth had gone dry, her hands cold. The room felt too small, the walls too close. Victor Rinaldi. She didn't know that name, but she knew the man who used to carry it. Nora? She swallowed hard, forced the words out. I need to go. Wait. But Nora was already moving, grabbing her coat, her bag, her keys. She didn't stop until she was outside, standing in the freezing rain with her heart hammering against her ribs. Victor Rinaldi. Ethan. He'd changed his name. Nora didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch in the dark, staring at the business card like it might explode. Her phone was in her hand, Marissa's number pulled up, a dozen unsent texts drafted and deleted. I can't do this. Tell him no. Why now? But she didn't send any of them. Because beneath the shock, beneath the anger and the fear and the exhaustion, there was something else. Something she didn't want to name. Curiosity. It had been 3 years since she'd seen him. 3 years since the worst night of her life. The night that had torn them apart and left nothing but wreckage in its wake. She'd built a new life from the rubble. A small life. A quiet life. But it was hers. And now he was back. Not as Ethan Hale, the man she'd married, but as Victor Rinaldi. A name that carried weight in Chicago, whispered in back rooms and boardrooms alike. She'd heard rumors, everyone had, about the family he'd married into, the empire he now controlled, the kind of power that made politicians nervous and enemies disappear. He wasn't the man she'd loved. He was something else entirely. The meeting was set for Thursday. Marissa didn't ask questions, just gave Nora the address and told her to be careful. It wasn't the center. It wasn't a public place. It was a private residence on the north side, the kind of address that came with gates and security cameras, and men who carried guns under expensive suits. Nora almost didn't go. She stood outside the gate for 5 full minutes, her hand hovering over the intercom button, every instinct screaming at her to turn around and run. But she didn't. She pressed the button. The gate opened without a word. The driveway was long, lined with bare trees that looked like skeletons against the winter sky. The house at the end was massive, stone and glass and sharp angles, the kind of architecture that was meant to intimidate. It worked. A man in a black suit met her at the door. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just gestured for her to follow. They walked through a foyer that could have swallowed her entire apartment, down a hallway lined with art she didn't recognize, into a room that was all windows and cold light. And there he was, standing with his back to her, staring out at the frozen lake beyond the glass. For a moment, Nora couldn't breathe. He looked the same and completely different. Same height, same build, same dark hair that always fell just slightly into his eyes. But the way he stood was new, shoulders squared, spine straight, like a man who'd learned to carry weight that would crush most people. He turned, and Nora's heart broke all over again, because his eyes were the same green she used to wake up to, the same green that had looked at her on their wedding day like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. But there was something else there now, something hard, something that hadn't existed 3 years ago. Grief. Nora. His voice was rougher than she remembered, lower, like he'd spent the last 3 years swallowing glass. She didn't move, didn't trust herself to. Thank you for coming. I shouldn't be here. I know. Silence stretched between them, heavy and sharp. "You changed your name," she said finally. "I changed everything." "Why?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he gestured to the chairs by the window. "Sit, please." "I'd rather stand." "Nora—" "Why am I here, Ethan?" "Victor." She flinched. "What?" "My name is Victor now." "I don't care what your name is. I want to know why you dragged me into whatever this is." He moved closer, and she forced herself not to step back, to hold her ground, to remember that she wasn't the woman who'd fallen apart 3 years ago. She was stronger now, harder. She had to be. "The donation is real," he said quietly. "No strings, no conditions. The center gets the funding whether you stay or leave." "Then why did you ask for me?" "Because I wanted to see you." The honesty of it knocked the air from her lungs. "I don't—" She shook her head, trying to find words that made sense. "You can't just, after everything, you don't get to do this." "I know." "Then why?" "Because I owe you the truth." "The truth?" She laughed, and it came out bitter. "The truth is you left. You disappeared. You became someone I don't even recognize." "I had to." "Why?" He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was so low she almost didn't hear it. "Because staying would have destroyed us both." Nora stared at him. At this man who used to be her husband, who used to hold her at night and whisper promises he couldn't keep, who used to look at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever had. "You destroyed us anyway," she whispered. "I know." She turned to leave. "Nora, wait. I'm done, Ethan. Victor. Whoever you are now, I'm done. Just—" He moved in front of her, blocking the door. Not touching, not threatening, just there. "One more minute, please." "Why should I?" "Because you came here for a reason." She wanted to deny it, to throw the words back in his face and walk out with her dignity intact. But he was right. She had come for a reason. She needed to know. "1 minute," she said. He nodded, stepped back, gave her space. "After the divorce," he said carefully, "I made a choice. I could fall apart, or I could become someone who couldn't be broken. I chose the latter. By joining a crime family, by marrying into one." The words hit like a slap. "You're married?" "Was. She died 2 years ago." Nora didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to feel. Relief? Guilt? Anger that he'd moved on while she was still drowning? "I'm sorry," she said finally, because it was the only thing that felt true. "Don't be. It wasn't what we had." "Then what was it?" "Survival." He moved to the window, stared out at the frozen water. When he spoke again, his voice was distant. "Her father ran the organization. When she got sick, he needed someone he could trust to take over, someone with no ties to the old guard, no loyalty except to her. I was convenient. And when she died, I stayed, because by then, I'd already become someone else." Nora crossed her arms, trying to hold herself together. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand. The man you married, Ethan, he's gone. He died the same day we lost." He stopped, couldn't finish. He didn't have to. Nora felt the words like a knife between her ribs. The baby. They never talked about it, not during the divorce, not in the months after. It was the wound they both carried in silence, the loss that had broken them in ways neither of them knew how to fix. "Don't," she whispered. "Nora, don't you dare bring that up now. I think about it every day." "Stop." "I think about her every day." Nora's hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. "You don't get to do this," she said, her voice cracking. "You don't get to walk back into my life and rip me open like this. I'm not trying to hurt you." "Then what are you trying to do?" He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was so raw, so unguarded, it nearly broke her. "I'm trying to make things right. You can't. I know. But I have to try." She wiped at her face, hating that she was crying, hating that he could still do this to her after everything. "The donation," she said, "is that supposed to fix things?" "No, it's supposed to help people who need it. People you've dedicated your life to helping. And what do you get out of it? Nothing, except maybe the chance to prove I'm not the monster you think I am. I don't think you're a monster, Ethan. Victor, I don't care what your name is. The words came out louder than she intended, echoing in the too big room. I don't care about your empire or your dead wife or your guilt. I care that you left me when I needed you most. I care that you chose to become someone else instead of fighting to stay us. There was no us left to fight for. The truth of it hung between them, brutal and final. Nora closed her eyes, trying to breathe through the pain that never really went away, just learned to hide better. I need to go, she said. This time, he didn't stop her. She made it to the door before his voice reached her one last time. I know I don't deserve it, but if you ever want to talk, really talk, I'll be here. She didn't turn around, didn't trust herself to. Goodbye, Ethan. Victor. She walked out. The center accepted the donation. Nora told herself it was the right choice, that 10 years of funding would change lives, would keep the doors open, would give people like Angela and her daughter a fighting chance. She told herself it had nothing to do with the man who signed the check. But late at night, alone in her apartment, she found herself staring at the business card she should have thrown away. Victor Rinaldi. A stranger wearing the face of the only man she'd ever loved. And despite everything, despite the hurt and the anger and the years of trying to forget, she couldn't stop wondering, who had he become? And why did part of her want to find out? Osem. 2 weeks later, Marissa knocked on her office door with an envelope. This came for you, hand-delivered. Inside was a single piece of paper, an address, a date, a time, and a handwritten note in a script she'd know anywhere. No pressure, no expectations, just a conversation between two people who survived the same nightmare. V. Nora stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. And against every instinct, every shred of self-preservation she'd built over the last 3 years, she texted back. One conversation, that's all. The reply came within seconds. That's all I'm asking. Nora set the phone down, her heart racing. She told herself it was closure. That's all this was. A chance to finally say everything she'd never been able to say. To put the past to rest and move forward. But deep down, in a place she didn't want to examine too closely, she knew it was a lie. Because closure didn't make your hands shake. Closure didn't make you check your reflection 3 times before leaving the house. Closure didn't make you feel like you were standing on the edge of a cliff, one step away from falling. But Nora went anyway, because some questions don't have answers. They only have consequences. And she was about to find out what happens when you ask them anyway. The address led to a restaurant Nora had never heard of, tucked into a street she'd walked past 100 times without noticing. No sign, no windows facing the sidewalk, just a black door with a brass number plate and a camera angled down from above. She stood outside for 3 full minutes, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The door opened before she could knock. A woman in her 60s, elegant in a way that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with presence, smiled at her. Ms. Hale? Yes? Please, come in. Mr. Rinaldi is waiting. The interior was warm, intimate, exposed brick, soft lighting, tables set far enough apart that conversations couldn't bleed together. Classical music played low enough to feel like atmosphere rather than intrusion. It was the kind of place where people came to talk about things that mattered, things that couldn't be said anywhere else. Victor sat at a corner table, half hidden in shadow. He stood when he saw her, and the gesture was so familiar, so Ethan, that Nora almost turned around and left. But she didn't. She crossed the room, her heels clicking against hardwood, and sat down across from him. You came, he said quietly. I said I would. You also said you were done. I am. This is just... She searched for the right word. Clarity. Fair enough. A server appeared with wine. Nora shook her head. Water, please. Victor nodded. 2 waters. When they were alone again, silence settled between them like fog. Heavy, obscuring. Thank you, Victor said finally, for agreeing to this. Don't thank me yet. I might walk out halfway through. You'd be entitled to. Nora studied him across the candlelight. He looked tired. Not the surface exhaustion that came from missed sleep, but something deeper, something that lived in the bones. You look different, she said. So do you. How? He considered the question carefully. Harder, like you learned to build walls. I had to. I know. He paused. It suits you. She didn't know what to do with that, so she changed the subject. Why this place? It's quiet, private, owned by someone who understands discretion. You mean someone who works for you? Yes. At least he didn't lie about it. What happened to you, Ethan? Victor. I don't care what name you use. I'm asking what happened. How did you go from... She gestured vaguely, trying to encompass everything they used to be. To this. He leaned back in his chair, shadows playing across his face. When he spoke, his voice was measured, careful. After the divorce, I left Chicago. Drove until I ran out of gas somewhere in Indiana. Sat in a parking lot for 6 hours trying to decide if I wanted to keep going or just... He trailed off. Or just what? End it. The words hit her like cold water. She'd been angry at him for 3 years, bitter about the way he'd vanished, but it had never occurred to her that he might have been that close to not existing at all. What stopped you? She asked quietly. Cowardice, maybe. Or stubbornness. I don't know. But I started driving again, ended up in New York, got a job doing construction, cash under the table, tried to disappear into the noise. And I met Isabella. Nora's chest tightened, but she forced herself to stay still, to listen. She was at a coffee shop, spilled her drink all over my jacket, apologized so profusely I couldn't stay angry. We started talking. She was... He searched for the right word. Kind. In a way I didn't think still existed. You fell in love with her? No. His answer was immediate, firm. I cared about her. I respected her. But I didn't love her. Not the way... He stopped himself. Not the way that word deserves? Nora looked away, blinking against the sting in her eyes. She knew that, Victor continued. From the beginning, she knew. But she didn't care. She said love was overrated anyway, that partnership mattered more. So you married her for partnership. I married her because her father needed someone to take over the organization, and she was dying. The bluntness of it made Nora flinch. Cancer, Victor said. Stage 4. She had maybe a year, and she didn't want to spend it fighting her father's lieutenants for control of something she'd never wanted in the first place. So she offered me a deal. Marry her, help her father transition the business to someone outside the old guard. And when she was gone, I'd have the resources to do something meaningful with it. That's insane. It was practical. It was insane, Nora repeated. You married a dying woman to inherit a crime empire? I married a dying woman who wanted to make sure her father didn't spend his last years watching everything he built tear itself apart from the inside. And what did you get out of it? Victor's jaw tightened. Purpose. The single word hung between them, sharp and final. Nora shook her head, trying to process. You could have done anything. You could have... What? Gone back to teaching? Pretended I was the same person I was before? He leaned forward, and there was something fierce in his eyes now, something that looked almost like anger. I died that night, Nora. The man you married died in a hospital room holding a daughter who never got to breathe. I couldn't go back to being him. I didn't know how. So you became someone else? Yes. And now you run an empire built on violence and fear. I run an organization, he corrected, one I'm trying to reshape into something that doesn't rely on either. Nora laughed, bitter. You can't clean dirty money by calling it something else. No, but you can stop making it dirty in the first place. What does that mean? He gestured to the server, who brought menus they both ignored. When they were alone again, Victor pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward her. It was a blueprint. Building plans. What am I looking at? Nora asked. A housing development, 40 units. Affordable, rent-controlled. Breaking ground next month. He swiped. Another image. A school. Partnership with the city. Trade programs, job training, childcare services. Swipe. A medical clinic. Free primary care. Addiction services. Mental health counseling. He set the phone down between them. I'm not trying to clean dirty money, he said quietly. I'm trying to stop making it. Every contract the organization held that involved intimidation, extortion, or violence, I've terminated it. Every business that couldn't operate without exploitation, I've shut it down or sold it off. What's left is real estate, legitimate investments, and construction. Nora stared at him. Your people can't be happy about that. They're not. I've had 3 attempted coups in 2 years. And you're still alive. Barely. The admission was so casual it took her a moment to register what he'd actually said. You're serious. Dead serious. A ghost of a smile. No pun intended. Why risk it? Why not just take the money and disappear? Because disappearing doesn't fix anything. It just moves the problem somewhere else. He met her eyes, and the intensity there made it hard to breathe. I didn't choose this life because I wanted power. I chose it because I was too broken to do anything else. And then I realized I was in a position to actually change things, to take something rotten and make it useful. Like penance. Like purpose, he corrected again. Penance implies I think I can be forgiven. I don't. Nora sat back, her mind spinning. This wasn't the conversation she'd expected. She'd come here expecting manipulation, maybe charm, definitely some version of the man who'd walked away from their marriage without looking back. Instead, she'd found someone who'd weaponized his grief. The donation to the center, she said slowly. That's part of this? Yes. Why us specifically? Because I've been watching what you do there. The people you help, the way you help them. You don't just hand out resources and hope for the best. You give people tools to rebuild themselves. You've been watching? Not in a creepy way, he said quickly. Just, I've kept track, made sure you were okay. That is the creepy way. Fair point. Despite everything, Nora felt the corner of her mouth twitch. Almost a smile. She caught it before it could fully form. I don't know what you want from me, she said. If you're looking for absolution, I can't give it to you. I'm not looking for absolution. Then what? Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough, barely above a whisper. I want you to know that I think about her every day, our daughter. I think about what she would have looked like, who she would have become. I think about the nursery we never got to use, the name we never got to say out loud. And I think about you, holding her, even though you knew, his voice cracked. Even though you knew she was already gone. Nora couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The memory crashed over her like a wave. Sterile lights. The silence where a heartbeat should have been. The weight in her arms that was somehow both everything and nothing. Stop, she whispered. I should have been there, Victor continued. I should have held you. I should have told you it wasn't your fault, that there was nothing you could have done differently. But I couldn't, because I was so angry at the universe, at fate, at myself, and I didn't know how to separate that anger from you. Ethan, so I left, and I've regretted it every single day since. Tears were streaming down Nora's face now, hot and fast. She didn't bother wiping them away. You don't get to do this, she said, her voice shaking. You don't get to break me open like this and expect… What? Forgiveness? Understanding? No, I expect nothing. He reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. I just need you to know that I carried that grief too. That I still carry it. And that becoming Victor Rinaldi wasn't about running away from Ethan Hale. It was about trying to become someone strong enough to live with what Ethan couldn't. Nora pulled her hand back, wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know what to say to that. You don't have to say anything. I need air. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her water glass. Victor caught it, steady, and for a second their eyes met and something passed between them, recognition, maybe, of the people they used to be. Then Nora turned and walked toward the exit. She made it halfway before Victor's voice stopped her. There's something else. She didn't turn around. What? I kept it, the nursery. I had to preserve it, everything exactly the way we left it. Nora's heart stopped. It's not in the city, he continued quietly. It's at a house upstate, private. No one knows about it except me. If you need to see it, I'll take you. No questions, no expectations. She stood frozen, her back to him. every muscle in her body screaming to run. "Why would you do that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Because I couldn't let her go completely, and I thought maybe someday you'd need proof that she was real, that we were real." Nora closed her eyes, fighting for control. For the walls she'd spent 3 years building. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." She walked out into the cold night air, gasping like she'd been underwater. Her hands were shaking, her whole body was shaking. A car was waiting at the curb, the same driver who'd let her into Victor's house. He opened the door without a word. "I can walk," Nora said. "Mr. Rinaldi insists." Of course he did. She got in the car because arguing would take energy she didn't have. The drive back to her apartment was silent. The driver didn't try to make conversation. When they pulled up outside her building, he handed her a card. "If you need anything, anything at all." Nora took it, mostly because refusing felt like more effort than accepting. Inside her apartment, she collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. Over the next 2 weeks, Nora tried to forget the conversation, tried to lose herself in work, in the daily rhythm of clients and crises and small victories that made the world slightly less broken. It didn't work. Victor had cracked something open inside her, and now everything felt raw and exposed. She found herself thinking about him at odd moments, while making coffee, while walking home from the center, while lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering what the hell she was doing. The worst part was that she couldn't hate him. She wanted to. It would be so much easier if she could just hate him for leaving, for becoming someone unrecognizable, for walking back into her life and detonating everything she'd carefully rebuilt. But she couldn't. Because beneath the anger and the hurt, there was something else. Something that recognized the grief in his eyes because she carried the same weight. They were two people who'd survived the same nightmare, and maybe that meant something. The text came on a Thursday. "I'm hosting a small gathering tomorrow night. Investors, city officials, people who need to see that the organization is moving in a legitimate direction. I could use an ally, no pressure if that's too much." Nora stared at the message for a full minute. Then she typed back, "What time?" His response was immediate. 7. "I'll send a car. I'll drive myself." "Fair enough. Address attached." And Nora? "What? Thank you." She set the phone down, her heart racing. What was she doing? The gathering was at Victor's estate, the same place where she'd first met him as his new self. Nora arrived fashionably late, mostly because she'd changed outfits 4 times and nearly talked herself out of going twice. The house was full of people in expensive suits, carrying wine glasses and conversation like weapons. Nora recognized a few faces: a city councilman, a real estate developer, a woman who ran a major nonprofit. Victor was in the center of it all, moving through the crowd with the kind of easy confidence that came from knowing exactly who he was and what he wanted. He was mid-conversation when he saw her, and something in his expression shifted, softened. He excused himself and crossed the room. "You came." "Against my better judgment." "I'll take it." He gestured to the crowd. "Can I get you a drink?" Fair warning, the wine is pretentious and the conversation is worse. Despite herself, Nora smiled. "I'll risk it." He guided her to the bar, poured her a glass of something red that probably cost more than her rent, then clinked his glass against hers. "To terrible decisions," he said. "And the people who make them," Nora finished. They drank. For the next hour, Victor introduced her to people whose names she immediately forgot. They were polite, curious about her work at the center, careful not to ask too many questions about her connection to their host. It was exhausting. Nora was about to excuse herself when a man in his 50s approached Victor with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Rinaldi, quite the party." "Caleb, glad you could make it." The man, Caleb, shifted his attention to Nora. "And who's this?" "Nora Hale. She runs the Brightwood Community Center." "Ah, yes, the charity project." The words were polite, but the tone underneath was anything but. Nora felt Victor tense beside her. "The Community Investment Project," Victor corrected smoothly. 10-year commitment, already seeing results." "I'm sure." Caleb's smile widened. "Always good to have a humanitarian angle. Makes for excellent PR." "It makes for actual change," Nora said, her voice cool. "But I'm sure you wouldn't know much about that." The room went quiet. Caleb's expression hardened. "Excuse me?" You heard me. Victor stepped forward, placing himself slightly between them. Caleb, why don't we discuss those contracts you mentioned? Nora, if you'll excuse us. But Caleb wasn't done. No, please. Let's hear what Ms. Hale has to say. After all, she's clearly an expert on what the organization should prioritize. I'm an expert on recognizing when someone's more interested in maintaining power than actually helping people, Nora shot back. And you strike me as the former. Nora, Victor said quietly. A warning. But she was done being careful, done pretending. You want to know why I'm here? It's because Victor is trying to do something that actually matters. And people like you, people who profit from keeping things broken, are terrified of that. Caleb's face went red. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? I've spent 5 years watching communities get hollowed out by people who see them as nothing but revenue streams. I know exactly what I'm talking about. That's enough, Victor said, his voice hard now. Caleb, we're done here. Are we? Caleb looked at Victor with something close to contempt. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're letting some naive social worker dictate policy. That's not leadership, Rinaldi. That's weakness. Get out. Or what? You'll have me removed? Caleb laughed. You're not the man Marco was. He understood that power requires strength, not sentimentality. Marco's dead, Victor said flatly, and the world he built is dying with him. Get out before I make you. For a moment, Caleb looked like he might argue. Then he glanced around the room, saw the security personnel who'd materialized at the edges, and smiled coldly. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Caleb left. The room stayed quiet for several long seconds. Then conversation slowly resumed, tentative at first, then building back to normal volume. Victor turned to Nora, his expression unreadable. We need to talk, privately. He led her through the house to a study lined with books and dark wood. The door closed behind them with a soft click. I'm sorry, Nora said immediately. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. Victor leaned against the desk, running a hand through his hair. You said what I've been too diplomatic to say for months. Who is he? Caleb Voss, one of the old guard. He was Marco's enforcer for 20 years. And now? Now he's a problem. Victor sighed. He represents everyone who wants things to stay the way they were. Violent, profitable, unstable. Can he actually do anything? He can try. Nora crossed her arms, suddenly cold. Should I be worried? No, I won't let anything happen to you. That's not what I asked. Victor met her eyes. Yes, you should be worried. Because by coming here, by associating with me publicly, you've made yourself visible to people who don't like the direction I'm taking things. So what do I do? You let me protect you. I don't need protection. Nora, I'm not some fragile thing that needs guarding, she said firmly. If being here makes me a target, then fine, I'll deal with it, but I'm not going to hide. Something flickered across Victor's face. Pride, maybe, or fear. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless, he said. Probably both. He smiled, just slightly. Yeah, probably. They stood there in the quiet, the party muffled and distant beyond the door. Thank you, Victor said finally. For tonight. For standing up to Caleb. For, he gestured vaguely, for not running when you had every reason to. Don't thank me yet, I still might. I know. Nora moved to the window, looked out at the frozen grounds beyond. The nursery, she said quietly. The one you mentioned. Is it far? About 2 hours upstate. I want to see it. Victor went very still. Are you sure? No, but I need to anyway. When? Tomorrow, before I change my mind. I'll drive us. Nora nodded, not trusting her voice. She turned to leave, but Victor's voice stopped her one more time. Nora? What you said to Caleb about me trying to do something that matters? Did you mean it? She looked back at him, at this man who was both stranger and familiar, both the person who'd broken her heart and the person who might be trying to piece his own back together. I meant it, she said. Whether that's enough to forgive you, I don't know yet. But I meant it. Something in his expression cracked open. Relief, maybe, or hope. That's more than I deserve, he said roughly. Probably, Nora agreed. Then she walked out before the tears could start again. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Nora's mind wouldn't stop racing, replaying the night, the confrontation, the look on Victor's face when she'd agreed to see the nursery. She was making a mistake. She had to be. You didn't walk back toward the person who'd shattered you. You didn't let them pull you into their dangerous world. You didn't agree to revisit the single worst moment of your life just because they'd kept a room frozen in time. But even knowing all that, even understanding how monumentally stupid this was, she couldn't stop. Because maybe Victor was right. Maybe they were two people who'd survived the same nightmare. And maybe that meant they were the only ones who could understand what came after. Victor arrived at 7 in the morning, exactly when he said he would. Nora watched from her window as he got out of a black SUV, not one of the sleek town cars with drivers, but something he was driving himself. He looked up at her building, checking his phone, then leaned against the hood to wait. She grabbed her coat and went down before she could lose her nerve. "Morning," he said when she stepped outside. "Morning." He opened the passenger door for her, a gesture so automatic it had to be muscle memory from another life. Nora got in without comment, and they pulled away from the curb as the city was just beginning to wake. For the first 20 minutes, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just heavy with things neither knew how to say. Victor kept his eyes on the road, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console. Nora watched the buildings give way to suburbs, then to stretches of bare trees and fields covered in old snow. "Thank you for doing this," Victor said finally. "I know it's not easy." "Nothing about this is easy." "No, I guess not." More silence. Then Nora asked the question that had been circling her mind since she'd woken up. "Why did you keep it? The nursery. Why not just let it go?" Victor's jaw tightened. "I tried. About 6 months after Isabella died, I went up there planning to pack everything away. Donate it or burn it or just leave it on the curb for someone else to deal with." "What stopped you?" "I got as far as the doorway, stood there for maybe an hour, just staring at the crib we'd put together, and I couldn't do it." His voice dropped. "It felt like if I dismantled that room, if I erased the evidence that she almost existed, then she'd be gone completely. And I couldn't make her disappear twice." Nora's throat closed. She turned to look out the window so he wouldn't see her face. "I used to dream about her," she said quietly, "for months after. I'd dream that it was all a mistake, that she was breathing, that the doctors were wrong, and then I'd wake up and have to remember all over again that she was gone." "Do you still?" "Not as often, but sometimes." She wiped at her eyes. "The dreams are different now. Sometimes she's older, walking, talking. I see her face clearly, your eyes, my smile. And when I wake up, it hurts worse because I know exactly what we lost." Victor's hand moved on the console, then stopped, like he'd been about to reach for her but thought better of it. "Her name," he said. "We never said it out loud. At the hospital, after. I couldn't. It felt too real." "B," Nora whispered. "Short for Beatrice. We were going to call her B." "B," Victor repeated, testing the shape of it. His voice cracked on the single syllable. "Yeah." That was it. They drove in silence again, but this time it felt different. Shared, somehow. Like the weight had shifted from crushing to merely heavy. The house appeared around a bend in the road, a sprawling craftsman-style structure surrounded by woods, isolated enough that you couldn't see neighbors in any direction. It looked nothing like Victor's estate in Chicago. This was warm, lived in, the kind of place designed for lazy Sundays and family dinners. "I bought it for Isabella," Victor explained as they pulled into the driveway. "She wanted somewhere quiet, away from the organization, away from Chicago. We came up here on weekends when she was still strong enough to travel. It's beautiful." She had good taste. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wood smoke and something floral. The furniture was comfortable, mismatched in a way that felt intentional rather than careless. Books lined the walls. Photographs in simple frames showed a woman with dark hair and kind eyes, sometimes alone, sometimes with Victor, always smiling like she knew a secret the world hadn't figured out yet. "That's her," Victor said unnecessarily. Nora studied the photos, this woman who'd been her husband's wife. Isabella looked nothing like her. Where Nora was blonde and angular, Isabella had been soft and dark. But there was something in her expression, a gentleness maybe, or acceptance of hard truths that Nora recognized. She looks happy. She was, even at the end. I never understood how she managed it. Victor led her through the house to a hallway on the second floor. He stopped in front of a closed door, his hand on the knob. "Ready?" he asked. Nora wasn't, would never be, but she nodded anyway. He opened the door. The nursery was exactly as she remembered it. Pale yellow walls, white crib with the mobile they'd spent an hour debating in the store, the rocking chair her mother had insisted they needed, the bookshelf already full of stories they'd planned to read aloud, voices doing all the characters, making their daughter laugh before she even understood the words. It was frozen, preserved, a monument to something that never got to be. Nora's legs gave out. Victor caught her before she hit the floor, guided her to the rocking chair, and knelt in front of her. His hands were steady on her shoulders, his eyes searching her face. "Breathe," he said quietly. "Just breathe." She couldn't. The air wouldn't come. Her chest felt like it was caving in, ribs cracking under pressure that had nowhere to go. "Nora, breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Come on." She focused on his voice, used it as an anchor. Slowly, painfully, her lungs started working again. "That's it. You're okay. I've got you." The words broke something loose. Nora sobbed, the sound ripping out of her like it had been trapped for 3 years. Victor pulled her forward, let her bury her face in his shoulder, and held her while she shattered. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry. For all of it. For leaving, for not being strong enough to stay, for making you carry this alone." "I hate you," Nora gasped between sobs. "I hate you so much. I know. You left me when I needed you most. I know. You became someone I don't recognize. I know." His arms tightened around her. "But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving again. I swear to you, Nora, I'm not leaving." She didn't know how long they stayed like that. Minutes, maybe, or hours. Time felt meaningless in this room where their daughter should have grown but never did. Eventually, the tears slowed. Nora pulled back, her face blotchy and swollen, and looked at the room properly. "You even kept the stuffed elephant," she said, her voice raw. "Of course." It sat in the corner of the crib, gray and floppy-eared, the first thing they'd bought when they found out they were pregnant. Nora had seen it in a store window and known immediately that it belonged to their baby. She stood on shaky legs, crossed to the crib, and picked up the elephant. It was soft, well-made, exactly as she remembered. "I used to imagine reading to her here," she said quietly. "In this chair, with her in my arms. I'd already picked out which books we'd start with. Good Night Moon. The Very Hungry Caterpillar. The same ones my mom read to me." Victor moved to stand beside her. "I imagined teaching her to walk, right here in this room, holding her hands while she figured out her balance. She would have had your stubbornness, and your kindness, your laugh, your eyes." They stood together, staring at the crib, building a ghost out of wishes and what-ifs. "Do you ever wonder," Nora asked, "what she would have been like, as a person, not just as a baby, but as she grew up?" "Every day." Victor's voice was rough. "I think she would have been fierce, smart, probably would have given us hell as a teenager. Definitely." Nora smiled through fresh tears. "She would have had opinions about everything, and the stubborn streak to back them up. She would have changed the world. Yeah, she would have." Silence settled over them again, but gentler this time. Reverent, almost. Nora set the elephant back in the crib, arranging it carefully. "Thank you for keeping this, for not letting her disappear. Thank you for coming, for being brave enough to face it." She turned to look at him, really look at him. Victor Rinaldi, who used to be Ethan Hale, who'd broken her heart and rebuilt himself into someone unrecognizable, who carried the same grief she did, just in a different shape. "I don't know what we're doing," she said. "This thing between us, I don't know what it is or where it's going. Neither do I. I'm not ready to forgive you. I'm not asking you to. But I don't hate you as much as I want to. I'll take it. She almost smiled. Almost. You're impossible. So I've been told. They left the nursery together, closing the door softly behind them. Downstairs, Victor made coffee while Nora wandered through the house, looking at Isabella's things, her books, her art, the small touches that made a house feel lived in. She collected teacups, Nora observed, studying a cabinet full of delicate china. From every place she traveled, she said each one held a memory. That's lovely. She was lovely. Victor handed her a mug. I think you would have liked her, and I know she would have liked you. How can you know that? Because she understood loss, and she respected people who survived it without becoming bitter. They drank their coffee on the back porch, watching crows circle bare trees. The cold bit through Nora's coat, but she didn't suggest going inside. The discomfort felt appropriate somehow, a reminder that they were still alive, still feeling. Can I ask you something? Victor said eventually. Depends on the question. Why did you really come back after I sent that first text? You could have ignored it. Nora considered the question. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wanted closure. Part of me wanted to prove I was strong enough to face you and not fall apart. And part of me just missed you. Not who you are now, but who you were. Who we were together. She looked at him. Is that pathetic? No, it's human. What about you? Why reach out after 3 years? Victor stared into his coffee like it held answers. Because I was tired of pretending the past didn't exist. I built this whole new life, became this whole new person, but I couldn't escape the fact that the best parts of who I used to be died with her. With B. He said the name carefully, like testing a wound. And I thought maybe if I could face you, face what we lost together, I could figure out how to be whole again. Are you? Whole? No, but I'm closer than I was. A phone buzzed. Victor pulled it out, frowned at the screen, then silenced it. Problem? Nora asked. Probably, but it can wait. The phone buzzed again and again. You should answer it, Nora said. Victor sighed, stepped away, and took the call. Nora couldn't hear the conversation, but she watched his body language shift, shoulders tensing, jaw setting, the easy warmth draining out of his expression and being replaced by something harder, more Rinaldi than Hale. When he came back, his face was grim. I need to get back to the city, now. What happened? Caleb made a move. 3 of my project sites were vandalized overnight. Equipment destroyed, permits stolen, and someone leaked details about the community center funding to a journalist asking questions about where the money's really coming from. Nora's stomach dropped. They're coming after the center? They're coming after anything connected to me, which means yes, the center is now a target. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration rolling off him in waves. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have involved you in this. You didn't involve me. I chose to be involved. That doesn't make it better. Maybe not, but it's true. She stood, set down her mug. So what do? We don't do anything. I handle Caleb. You stay safe and out of the line of fire. Like hell. Nora, if they're going after the center, then they're going after my people, my clients, kids who don't have anything to do with your organization or your power struggle. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while that happens. It's not safe. I don't care. I care, Victor said, and there was something raw in his voice. I just got you back. I'm not losing you again because Caleb wants to prove a point. The words hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to examine. You haven't got me back, Nora said quietly. I'm still figuring out if I want to be got. Fair enough, but I'm still not letting you walk into danger. Then don't let me walk into it. Walk into it with me. Victor stared at her for a long moment. Then, despite everything, he laughed, short, sharp, almost disbelieving. You really are either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless. Probably both, Nora repeated from the night before. So are we doing this or not? Yeah, we're doing this. They drove back to Chicago in tense silence, Victor making calls the entire way. By the time they hit city limits, he'd mobilized security for the center, contacted his attorney about the leaked information, and set up a meeting with his closest allies for that evening. Drop me at my apartment, Nora said as they entered her neighborhood. Absolutely not. You're coming to the estate where there's actual security. Victor, this isn't negotiable. His tone left no room for argument. Caleb doesn't play by rules. If he thinks hurting you will hurt me, he'll do it without blinking. So you're staying somewhere safe until this is resolved. Nora wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her independence, her right to make her own choices. But the hard truth was that Victor was right. She'd walked into his world, and that came with consequences she wasn't equipped to handle alone. Fine, but I need clothes, and I need to check on the center. I'll have someone pack you a bag, and I've already got people at the center making sure it's secure. You've thought of everything. I've had practice. The estate was different in daylight, less intimidating, more like a fortress designed to look like a home. Security was visible now, men and women in dark suits stationed at every entrance, cameras tracking movement from every angle. Victor led her to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment. Make yourself comfortable. If you need anything, just ask. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. End this. There was something cold in his voice, something that reminded Nora that Victor Rinaldi wasn't just a man trying to go legitimate. He was still the head of an organization built on power and fear, and he knew how to use both. Be careful, she said. He paused in the doorway, looked back at her. I will. I promise. Then he was gone, and Nora was alone in a room that felt like a cage made of expensive furniture. She tried to rest. Couldn't. Tried to read. Couldn't focus. Eventually she wandered downstairs, following the sound of voices to what turned out to be a war room of sorts, a conference space where Victor sat with half a dozen people, maps and documents spread across the table. Everyone looked up when she entered. Miss Hale, one of the men said, standing, you shouldn't be here. It's fine, Victor said. Nora, this is my legal team and head of security. Everyone, this is Nora Hale. She has a right to know what's happening since she's been dragged into it. One of the women, sharp-eyed, mid-40s, with the air of someone who'd seen everything, gestured to an empty chair. Sit. We're just going over Caleb's likely next moves. Nora sat, feeling out of place but refusing to show it. He's trying to force a vote, the woman continued. Get enough of the old guard on his side to challenge Victor's leadership. The vandalism, the leaks, that's all theater, making Victor look weak like he can't protect his own interests. Can he force a vote? Nora asked. Technically, yes. If he gets a majority of senior members to support it. The woman looked at Victor. How many do you have locked down? 60% maybe. The rest are either with Caleb or waiting to see which way the wind blows. That's not enough. I know. So what do we do? Nora asked. The security head, a man built like a wall, smiled without humor. We make sure the wind blows our direction. How? By reminding people that Victor isn't weak, that crossing him has consequences. Nora looked at Victor. What does that mean? It means I visit Caleb, tonight. Make it clear that his options are to stand down or face repercussions he won't like. That sounds like a threat. It is. And if he doesn't back down? Victor's expression went flat. Then I remove him from the equation, permanently. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Nora felt cold. You mean kill him? I mean eliminate him as a threat. There are ways to do that without murder, but I won't take anything off the table. This is insane. This is the world I live in. Victor leaned forward, his eyes intense. I'm trying to change it, Nora. I'm trying to build something better. But I can't do that if people like Caleb tear it down before it's even started. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And if you become just like them in the process, then at least I'll have tried. Nora stood abruptly. I need air. She left the room, left the building, walked out into the gardens where security watched but didn't approach. Her breath came in clouds, her mind racing. This was who Victor was now. Not just a man trying to atone for his past, but someone willing to do terrible things for what he believed were the right reasons. Could she accept that? Did she even have a choice? Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. I know this isn't what you signed up for, Victor said quietly. I didn't sign up for anything. I know, which is why you can leave right now. I'll have someone take you home, make sure you're protected, and you never have to see me again. Nora turned to face him. Is that what you want? No, but it's what you might need. She studied him in the fading light. This man who was both stranger and familiar, both monster and victim of his own choices. I don't know what I need, she admitted, but I know I'm not running, not yet. Why not? Because despite everything, despite the violence and the threats, and the fact that you've become someone who talks about eliminating people, I still see him. Ethan, the man who cried when we found out I was pregnant, who spent 3 hours putting together a crib because he wanted it to be perfect, who would have been an incredible father. Victor's face crumpled. He's gone, Nora. Maybe. Or maybe he's just buried under all the armor you've built. She stepped closer. You want to change the organization? Prove it. Don't become the thing you're trying to replace. And if Caleb doesn't give me a choice, then you make one anyway. You find a third option, because that's what Ethan would have done. He would have found another way. Victor was quiet for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. Change of plans, he said to whoever answered. Get me a meeting with Caleb. Public location, neutral ground. I want to talk before this goes any further. He listened, then nodded. I don't care what he wants. Tell him Victor Rinaldi is offering him one chance to walk away. He can take it or face consequences, but I'm giving him the choice. A pause. Good. Set it up. He ended the call, looked at Nora. Satisfied? It's a start. A start toward what? Toward being someone I might be able to forgive someday. Something in Victor's expression shifted. Hope, maybe, or something close to it. I'll take it, he said. They stood in the cold garden as night fell, two people trying to navigate the impossible space between past and future, between who they'd been and who they might become. And for the first time since she'd walked back into his life, Nora thought maybe, just maybe, they might survive this after all. The meeting with Caleb was set for the next evening. A restaurant, public but private enough for sensitive conversation. Victor spent the day preparing, consulting with advisors, making calls. Nora stayed close, watching him work, seeing the way he balanced ruthlessness with something that might have been mercy. She wanted to believe he could pull this off, that he could broker peace without violence. But she'd been around long enough to know that wanting something didn't make it true. The restaurant was the same one where she and Victor had first talked. The older woman who'd greeted Nora before smiled when they arrived, led them to a private room in the back. Caleb was already there, flanked by two men who radiated threat. He looked up when Victor and Nora entered, his expression unreadable. Rinaldi, and the social worker, how domestic. Caleb. Victor sat across from him, gestured for Nora to sit beside him. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? Everyone has a choice. That's why we're here. Caleb leaned back, studying them. So talk. What exactly are you offering? A way out. You walk away from the organization, retire with your assets intact and your reputation preserved. I'll even set you up with a consulting contract so you're not left without income. And in exchange, you stop fighting the transition. You stop recruiting the old guard against me. You let the organization move forward. Caleb laughed. Cold, sharp. You want me to roll over while you dismantle everything Marco built. I want you to recognize that what Marco built is dying. The world's changed, Caleb. Law enforcement is smarter. Regulations are tighter, and violence draws attention we can't afford. Going legitimate isn't weakness. It's evolution. It's surrender. It's survival. For who? For you? Caleb's eyes narrowed. You're not one of us, Rinaldi. You married into this family, but you were never really part of it. You don't understand what it means to build something from nothing, to fight for every inch of territory, to earn respect through strength. You're right, I don't. But I understand that continuing down that path will destroy everything you claim to care about. Better destroyed than perverted into whatever soft nonsense you're peddling. Victor's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. This is your last chance. Take the offer. Walk away. Live out your life in peace. And if I don't, then I'll dismantle you piece by piece until there's nothing left. Caleb stood slowly. You don't have the stomach for it. Try me. For a moment, the room felt like it might explode. Then Caleb smiled, cold and certain. This isn't over, Rinaldi, not by a long shot. He left, his men following. Nora let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Well, that went well. It went exactly as I expected. Victor stood, offered her his hand. Come on, we need to move fast now. Move where? Somewhere safe. Because Caleb just declared war. They didn't make it back to the estate. Victor's phone lit up 3 blocks from the restaurant, the security head's voice sharp through the speaker. Sir, we have a situation. Someone breached the perimeter at the north gate. Explosive device. We evacuated, but... The line went dead. Victor yanked the wheel hard, tires screaming as he turned down a side street. Nora braced herself against the dashboard, her heart hammering. What's happening? Caleb's not waiting. Victor's face was granite, all the warmth from earlier conversations gone. He's hitting us now while we're away from the property. Is anyone hurt? I don't know. Signal's jammed. He pulled out a second phone, one Nora hadn't seen before, and dialed. This time, someone answered. Marcus, talk to me. Nora could only hear Victor's side of the conversation, but she watched the tension in his shoulders multiply with every sentence. How many? Christ. Okay, lock down the house, get everyone to the safe room. I'm taking Nora somewhere secure. No, not there. He'll expect that. I know where. Just hold position until I can regroup. He ended the call and took another sharp turn, heading away from the estate entirely. Victor, what's going on? Caleb hit 3 locations simultaneously, the estate, my downtown office, and the warehouse district where we store construction equipment. He's not trying to hurt anyone, not yet. He's showing me he can reach anywhere I have assets. That's insane. This is Chicago, not some war zone. The police won't do anything. Half of them are on someone's payroll, and the other half know better than to get involved in organization business. Victor's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. This is how it works, Nora. This is the world I tried to warn you about. So where are we going? Somewhere Caleb doesn't know about. Somewhere even my own people don't know about. They drove for another 20 minutes, zigzagging through neighborhoods until Nora lost track of where they were. Finally, Victor pulled into an underground garage beneath what looked like an abandoned office building. He parked in a far corner, killed the engine, and sat for a moment with his eyes closed. Are you okay? Nora asked quietly. No, but I will be. He opened his eyes, looked at her. I'm sorry for all of this. You were right earlier. You didn't sign up for this. Maybe not. But I'm here anyway. You can still leave. I can get you out of the city, set you up somewhere safe until this is over. Is that what you want? What I want is for you to be alive and whole and far away from this nightmare. And what do you need? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He studied her face in the dim garage light, and something in his expression cracked. I need you to stay, he admitted. I need to know that through all of this, through the violence and the chaos and the impossible choices, there's still someone who sees me as more than just Rinaldi, someone who remembers Ethan. Nora reached across the center console and took his hand. His fingers were cold, tense. She squeezed. Then I'm staying. He brought her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that felt like both gratitude and grief, then let go and got out of the car. The building's interior was better maintained than the exterior suggested. Someone had converted the upper floors into a living space, open concept, industrial chic, with floor-to-ceiling windows that had been covered with blackout shades. There was food in the refrigerator, clothes in the closet, everything needed for an extended stay. Is this where you've been living? Nora asked. Sometimes, when I need to think without security breathing down my neck. Victor moved through the space, checking windows, testing locks. Isabella knew about it, nobody else. Not even your security team? Especially not them. The fewer people who know about a bolt hole, the safer it is. He pulled out his phone, the regular one, and powered it down completely, then did the same with the backup. We're dark now. No communications in or out until I'm sure we're not being tracked. The reality of the situation started to sink in. They were alone, cut off, with a violent man actively hunting them. Nora felt her pulse quicken, fear finally catching up with adrenaline. Hey. Victor crossed to her, hands gentle on her shoulders. Breathe. We're safe here. I promise. How can you promise that? Because I've been preparing for this scenario since I took over the organization. Multiple safe houses, emergency protocols, contingencies for every possible threat. Caleb's dangerous, but he's not omniscient. And your people at the estate? We'll hold. Marcus has been with the family for 30 years. He knows how to handle a siege. Victor guided her to the couch, sat beside her. Right now, the best thing we can do is wait. Let Caleb make his moves while I figure out the next step. I don't know how you live like this, constantly looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next attack. You get used to it, or you break. He leaned back, exhaustion finally showing through the cracks in his armor. I'm sorry you're seeing this side of it. I wanted to believe I could keep you separate from the violence. You can't separate yourself from it. How did you think I would be any different? Hope, maybe. Or delusion. They sat in silence, the weight of everything pressing down. Outside, the city continued its oblivious rhythm, people going about their lives with no idea that a few floors above them, two people were hiding from a war most didn't know existed. Nora's phone buzzed. She'd forgotten to turn it off. Marissa's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, Victor said immediately. It's my boss. She'll be worried. And if Caleb's people are monitoring your phone, answering will tell them exactly where you are. Nora stared at the screen, watching it buzz once, twice, then go silent. A moment later, a text came through. Nora, where are you? Police were here asking about the center's funding. Need to talk ASAP. He's going after the center, Nora said, her voice hollow. Just like you said he would. I'll handle it. How? You can't even use your phone. Victor stood, paced to the window, stared at the covered glass like he could see through it. Caleb wants me to react, to come out of hiding and defend my interests. That's when he'll strike. So what do? We don't give him what he wants. We wait him out, let him overextend himself, then hit him where he's vulnerable. And in the meantime, the center suffers. In the meantime, the center weathers a storm. Victor turned to face her. Marissa's tough. She'll handle the police, handle the questions. And when this is over, I'll make sure the center has everything it needs to recover. That's not good enough. It's all I can offer right now. Nora stood, anger flaring hot in her chest. You pulled me into this. You made the center a target by attaching your name to it. And now you're telling me to just wait it out while people I care about deal with the consequences? What do you want me to do? Victor's voice rose to match hers. Walk out there and let Caleb put a bullet in me? That helps no one. I want you to fix this. I'm trying. Try harder. They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, the space between them crackling with frustration and fear. Then Victor moved. He closed the distance in 2 strides, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, raw. 3 years of grief and longing and rage poured into a single point of contact. Nora should have pushed him away, should have maintained the boundaries she'd worked so hard to build. Instead, she kissed him back, her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this, the taste of him, the familiar shape of his mouth, the way he held her, like she was both fragile and essential. When they finally broke apart, they were both shaking. I'm sorry, Victor breathed against her forehead. I shouldn't have. Shut up. She kissed him again, softer this time, and felt him melt into it. All the armor, all the careful control, it crumbled under her touch. They ended up on the couch, tangled together, not quite making love, but not quite able to stop touching. Victor's hands were in her hair, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, both of them trying to find something solid in the chaos. I missed you, Victor whispered. Every day for 3 years, I missed you. I know. I missed you too. I don't deserve this. Don't deserve you. Probably not. Nora pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But I'm here anyway. Why? Because despite everything, despite the violence and the danger and the fact that you've become someone I barely recognize, I still love you. I hate that I do, but I can't seem to stop. Victor's breath caught. Nora, I'm not saying it to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true. And because if we're going to survive this, we need to be honest about what we're fighting for. He kissed her again, gentle this time, reverent. I love you too. Never stopped. Even when I tried. They held each other as the city darkened outside, two people finding shelter in the eye of a storm that wasn't finished with them yet. Morning came too soon. Victor was up before dawn, the secure phone in his hand, a grim set to his jaw that told Nora the news wasn't good before he even spoke. What happened? Caleb escalated. 3 of my senior people turned up dead overnight, execution style. Nora's blood went cold. He's killing your allies? He's eliminating anyone who might stand against him, which means he's planning something bigger. Victor ran a hand through his hair. I need to move. Can't stay here while my people are being picked off. That's exactly what he wants you to do. I know, but I don't have a choice. If I hide while they die, I lose any authority I have left. The organization will fracture, and everything I've been trying to build collapses. Nora stood, wrapped a blanket around herself. Then we go together. Absolutely not. You said it yourself. We're stronger together than apart. You go out there alone and Caleb wins. But if I'm with you, if you're with me, you're a target. I'm already a target. The center, remember? He's already using me to get to you. At least this way I have some agency in how it plays out. Victor looked at her for a long moment. Then he crossed the room, framed her face with his hands. If anything happens to you, then you'll have something else to carry. I know. She covered his hands with hers. But we carry it together this time. Deal? You're impossible. So I've been told. They left the safe house an hour later, after Victor made 6 encrypted calls arranging a meeting with the remaining loyalists. The location was neutral ground, an old church that had been deconsecrated years ago and now served as a community space. Appropriate, Nora thought, for what amounted to a last stand. The church was already full when they arrived. Men and women in dark suits, faces Nora didn't recognize, all watching Victor with varying degrees of suspicion and hope. These were the people who'd bet their futures on his vision, and now they were waiting to see if that bet would pay off or get them killed. Marcus, the security head from the estate, approached first. Sir, everyone's accounted for. We swept the building twice. It's clean. Thank you, Marcus. Victor stepped to the front of the room, Nora beside him. The whispers that followed their entrance didn't escape her notice. I know you all have questions. I'll answer what I can. A woman in her 50s stood. Is it true? About Caleb killing our people? Yes, Thomas, Bianchi, and Reeves were all found dead this morning. Professional hits, meant to send a message. What message? Someone called from the back. That he's willing to burn it all down rather than let me change it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear, anger, uncertainty. So what do we do? Another voice asked. Fight back? Go to ground. We hold steady, Victor said firmly. Caleb wants chaos. He wants us scattered, afraid, turning on each other. We don't give him that satisfaction. Easy for you to say, a man near the front challenged. You're not the one who lost friends last night. No, but I am the one who brought us here, who promised you a future that didn't involve looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. And I intend to deliver on that promise. How? The woman asked. Caleb has half the old guard behind him. He has resources, connections, and we have legitimacy. Every project I've launched, every contract I've signed, every partnership with the city, that's power he can't match. He can kill our people, but he can't kill the momentum we've built. Pretty words, the challenger said, but words don't stop bullets. Victor's expression hardened. Neither does rolling over. I'm not asking you to die for this. I'm asking you to stand with me long enough to prove that we're stronger than one angry man with a grudge. And if we can't prove it, then we were wrong, and the organization deserves to fall, but I don't believe that. And I don't think you do either, or you wouldn't be here. Silence settled over the room. Then Marcus stepped forward. I stand with Victor, he said clearly. I've seen what the old way costs. I'm ready to try something different. The woman nodded slowly. As am I. One by one, others echoed the sentiment. Not everyone. A handful left, unwilling to bet their lives on Victor's vision, but enough stayed to form the core of something that might survive. Victor waited until the last person had declared themselves, then nodded. Thank you, all of you. Now here's what we're going to do. He laid out the plan with military precision, secure the remaining assets, consolidate protection for key personnel. Reach out to law enforcement through legitimate channels, not the corrupt ones on Caleb's payroll, but federal agents who'd been circling the organization for years and would love nothing more than an insider willing to testify about the old guard's activities. "You're going to turn on the family?" someone asked, shocked. "I'm going to give the authorities everything they need to dismantle the criminal elements while protecting the legitimate operations." Caleb wants a war? He'll get one, but it'll be fought in courtrooms and with subpoenas, not with bullets. That's a death sentence. It's evolution, survival of the fittest, and we're going to be the ones who survive. The meeting broke up an hour later, people filtering out in small groups to avoid drawing attention. Nora stayed close to Victor, watching him work, seeing the way he commanded loyalty, not through fear but through conviction. This was the man she'd fallen in love with, the one who believed in something better and was willing to sacrifice everything to achieve it. But it was also the man who'd become Victor Rinaldi, who understood violence and power and when to deploy both. She didn't know if those two people could coexist. They were loading into the car when the first shot rang out. Victor shoved Nora to the ground, his body covering hers as glass exploded around them. Marcus was already returning fire, his weapon appearing with practiced speed. Screams echoed from the church as people dove for cover. "Stay down," Victor ordered, low and urgent in her ear. Another shot, then another. Nora could hear voices shouting, engines roaring, the chaos of an ambush she hadn't seen coming. Marcus appeared at Victor's side. "Sir, we need to move. Now." "How many?" "At least 6 shooters. Caleb's people. They've got the exits covered." Victor swore viciously. "The underground passage. Does it still exist?" "Should. Maintenance tunnel from the church to the building next door, built during Prohibition." "Get everyone there. Nora and I will cover the rear." "Sir?" "That's an order, Marcus." The older man hesitated, then nodded and started herding people toward the church's basement entrance. Victor pulled a weapon from somewhere Nora hadn't noticed, a sleek black pistol that looked both foreign and intimately familiar in his hands. "Can you shoot?" he asked her. "What? No, I've never—" "Then stay behind me and do exactly what I say. Understand?" She nodded, too terrified to speak. They moved through the church in a low crouch, Victor checking corners with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. The sound of gunfire continued outside, interspersed with shouts and the screech of tires. The basement stairs were narrow, dark. Victor descended first, weapon raised, then gestured for Nora to follow. Behind them, she could hear more of Victor's people making their way down, Marcus bringing up the rear. The tunnel was exactly where he remembered, a brick-lined passage that smelled of mold and old earth. Emergency lights flickered to life as they entered, casting everything in sickly yellow. "Go!" Victor urged. "Fast as you can." They ran through the darkness, footsteps echoing, breath coming in ragged gasps. Nora's mind couldn't process what was happening. This was Chicago. This was real life. People didn't have shootouts in churches in real life, except they did. In Victor's world, they did. The tunnel ended in another basement, this one belonging to what looked like an old speakeasy. Victor led them upstairs through a door that opened onto an alley 2 blocks from the church. Cars were already waiting, part of the evacuation plan Victor had laid out earlier. Marcus started organizing people into groups, getting them dispersed before anyone could track where they'd gone. "You two," Marcus said to Victor and Nora. "Take the sedan, 3rd from the left. Get to the backup location and stay there until I send word." "Marcus, sir, please. We've got this. But you need to stay alive. You're the only thing holding this together." Victor looked like he wanted to argue, but Nora grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the car. They were pulling away from the curb when she saw it in the rearview mirror, a figure emerging from the church, silhouetted against flames that had started to consume the building. Caleb had burned it down. He'd burned down a church to make a point. "Victor," she whispered, "I see it." His jaw was set, his hands white-knuckled on the wheel. They drove in silence, taking a circuitous route to another safe house, this one farther north, in a neighborhood where no one would think to look. Once inside, Victor finally let himself react. He put his fist through the wall, the plaster cracking under the impact. Blood welled from his knuckles. "Victor, he could have killed you." His voice was raw, shaking. "One of those bullets, you could have—" "But I didn't. I'm okay. This time." What about next time, or the time after that? He turned to face her, and the anguish in his expression nearly broke her. I can't lose you again, Nora. I can't. She crossed to him, took his bleeding hand in hers and held it against her chest. Then end this. Whatever it takes. End it. I don't know if I can. Yes, you do. You're just afraid of what it'll cost. Of course I'm afraid, because ending this, really ending it, means becoming exactly what I've been trying to move away from. It means crossing lines I swore I wouldn't cross. Then don't cross them. Find another way. There isn't another way. Caleb won't stop until one of us is dead. Nora took a breath, steadied herself. Then it has to be him. The words hung in the air between them, final and terrible. Victor stared at her. You're asking me to kill him. I'm asking you to protect the people who depend on you. To protect me. To do whatever is necessary to make sure we have a future. She cupped his face in her hands. I hate that it's come to this. I hate that you're being forced to make this choice. But I'd rather live in a world where you made the hard decision than die in one where you didn't. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. I don't want to be a killer. You're not. You're a man who's being forced to defend himself and the people he loves. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Because when this is over, you won't keep killing. You'll go back to building something better, but you have to survive long enough to build it. Victor pulled her into his arms, held her so tightly she could barely breathe. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you have me anyway. They stood like that for a long time, drawing strength from each other, preparing for what came next. When Victor's phone finally rang, the secure one, they both knew what it meant. Marcus, Victor answered. Talk to me. Nora watched Victor's face as he listened, saw the moment everything shifted. When? I understand. Put everyone on standby. I'm coming in. He ended the call, looked at Nora with something that might have been relief or might have been dread. Caleb wants to meet, just the two of us. Says he has a proposal. It's a trap. Probably. But it might also be our best chance to end this without more bloodshed. Where? The old warehouse district, midnight. Victor checked his watch. I have 6 hours to prepare. I'm coming with you. Nora saw... Don't. We've been through this. I'm coming. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but you stay in the car with Marcus. You don't come inside no matter what happens. Deal. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But some lies were necessary to get through the next few hours. Victor spent the time making calls, arranging backup, preparing for every scenario he could imagine. Nora watched him transform back into Rinaldi, cold, calculated, ruthless when he needed to be. But when he looked at her, she still saw Ethan underneath. And that was what gave her hope that they might survive what was coming. At 11:30, they left for the warehouse district. Marcus drove, 2 other security personnel in a follow car. The city was quiet at this hour, streets empty, the kind of stillness that felt more like anticipation than peace. The warehouse loomed out of the darkness like a tombstone. Victor checked his weapon one last time, then looked at Nora. Whatever happens in there, don't. We're both walking out. But if we don't, well, we will. Because we have to. Because there's too much left to do, too much left to build. She grabbed his hand. Promise me you'll fight. Not just to survive, but to win. I promise. He kissed her, hard and desperate, then got out of the car and walked toward the warehouse. Nora waited exactly 30 seconds before following. Marcus caught her arm before she'd taken 3 steps. Ms. Hale, you promised. I promised to stay in the car. I didn't promise not to follow. Nora pulled free, her voice quiet but firm. He needs backup. He doesn't know he has. Someone Caleb won't see coming. He'll kill me if anything happens to you. Then make sure nothing happens to me. Marcus studied her face in the darkness, then sighed and pulled a small handgun from an ankle holster. Do you know how to use this? You point and shoot, right? Close enough. Safety's here. Don't touch the trigger unless you're ready to fire. And for the love of everything, don't shoot Mr. Rinaldi. Nora took the weapon, her hand shaking slightly at the weight of it. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just stay alive. They moved toward the warehouse together, Marcus keeping to the shadows with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Nora followed as quietly as she could, her heart hammering so loud she was certain everyone in a mile radius could hear it. The warehouse had multiple entrances. Victor had gone through the main loading dock. Marcus led Nora around to a side door, tested it quietly, then eased it open. Inside, the space was vast and empty, metal rafters disappearing into darkness overhead. Pools of light fell from industrial fixtures that still worked, creating islands of visibility in a sea of shadow. In the center of the largest pool stood Victor, alone, his weapon holstered but his hand resting near it, waiting. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the warehouse. Caleb emerged from the darkness, flanked by 4 men, all armed, all watching Victor with the intensity of predators sizing up prey. "Rinaldi!" Caleb called out, his voice bouncing off concrete and steel. Punctual. "I appreciate that." "You said you had a proposal. I'm listening." Caleb walked closer, stopping about 20 feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough to react if things went sideways. "It's simple, really. You step down. Announce that you're retiring for health reasons or personal matters. I don't care which. You transfer control of the organization to me, and in exchange, I let you walk away. You, your people, even your little social worker girlfriend, all of you get to live. And if I refuse, then everyone you care about dies, starting with her." Caleb smiled, cold and certain. "Oh yes, I know she's here. I know about the safe houses, the evacuation plans, all of it. You're not as clever as you think, Rinaldi." Victor's expression didn't change, but Nora saw his hand shift slightly closer to his weapon. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Caleb gestured, and one of his men pulled out a tablet, turned it toward Victor. On the screen was a live feed, the community center, dark and quiet, but with 2 figures visible near the entrance. "One phone call in that building burns, with your girlfriend's precious clients inside if necessary." Nora's blood turned to ice. Marcus's hand on her shoulder was the only thing keeping her from rushing forward. "You'd kill innocent people to make a point?" Victor's voice was hard, dangerous. "I'd kill everyone in this city if it meant maintaining what Marco built. You're the one who doesn't understand what's at stake here. This isn't about money or power. It's about legacy, about respect, about refusing to let everything we fought for get turned into some sanitized corporate entity. What you fought for was wrong." "According to who? You? You're not even one of us. You married into this family because your own life fell apart. You used Isabella's death to steal an empire you had no right to." "Isabella gave me that right, because she understood that the old way was killing everyone it touched. The old way kept this organization alive for 40 years, and nearly destroyed it in the process." Victor's control finally cracked, anger bleeding through. "Look at what you've become, Caleb. Threatening children, burning churches, murdering loyal soldiers who dared to imagine something better. This isn't strength. It's desperation. It's survival. Something you clearly don't understand. I understand it better than you know. I survived losing everything that mattered to me. I survived becoming someone I didn't recognize. And I survived by learning that some things are worth fighting for, even when the cost is unbearable." Victor took a step forward. "So here's my counterproposal. You walk away. Tonight. Leave Chicago, leave the organization, and never come back. I'll give you enough money to disappear comfortably, but you're done here." Caleb laughed, the sound echoing through the empty space. "You think you're in a position to negotiate?" "I think I'm in a position to end this one way or another. The question is how many people have to die before you accept that." "All of them, if necessary." Caleb moved fast, faster than Nora expected. His hand went to his weapon, and suddenly everything was motion and noise. Victor drew and fired in one smooth motion. Caleb dove behind a support pillar as his men scattered, returning fire. Marcus shoved Nora behind a stack of crates. "Stay down!" But Nora could see Victor, exposed in the center of the warehouse, pinned down by crossfire from 3 directions. One of Caleb's men was flanking him, moving through the shadows with deadly intent. She didn't think, just acted. Nora raised the weapon Marcus had given her, aimed at the figure creeping toward Victor, and squeezed the trigger. The recoil knocked her back, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. The shot went wide. She'd never fired a gun before, had no idea how to compensate for the kick, but it was close enough. The man dove for cover, giving Victor the seconds he needed to reposition. "Nora!" Marcus grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" "Keeping him alive." More gunfire. Victor had made it to better cover, was returning fire with precision that spoke of training Nora hadn't known he had. Two of Caleb's men were down, wounded or dead. She couldn't tell. The third was retreating, which left Caleb. He emerged from behind the pillar, weapon raised, aimed directly at Victor's position. Nora saw it happening in slow motion, the trajectory, the certainty that Victor couldn't see the angle, wouldn't know until it was too late. She ran. Marcus shouted something behind her, but she was already moving, her feet carrying her across open ground toward the sound of gunfire, and the man she'd loved and lost and found again. She raised her weapon, fired twice more, both shots wild but enough to make Caleb turn. His eyes found hers across the warehouse floor, and he smiled. "There she is," he said, swinging his aim toward her. The weakness. Time seemed to stop. Nora saw the barrel of his gun pointing at her chest, saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw Victor rising from cover, his face a mask of pure terror. Then Marcus was there, shoving her aside with enough force to send her sprawling. The shot that would have killed her caught him in the shoulder instead, spinning him around. Victor's return fire was immediate and fatal. 3 shots, center mass, professional, and cold. Caleb dropped without a sound. The warehouse went silent, except for the ringing in Nora's ears. She crawled to Marcus, her hand shaking so badly she could barely check his wound. "Oh God, oh God!" "I'm fine," Marcus grunted, already pressing his hand to his shoulder to slow the bleeding. "Went through clean. I've had worse." Victor was there a moment later, his weapon still drawn, scanning for remaining threats. When he saw Nora on the ground beside Marcus, something in his face shattered. "What the hell were you thinking?" His voice was raw, shaking. "You promised you'd stay in the car. You were about to die. So you decided to die instead?" "I decided to save you." Nora stood, her legs unsteady, her whole body trembling with adrenaline and fear. "You're welcome, by the way. You could have been killed. Do you understand that? 1 inch to the left and—" He couldn't finish, just pulled her into his arms so hard she could barely breathe. "But I wasn't. We're both alive." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Is it over? Is Caleb—" "He's dead." The reality of it hit her all at once. A man was dead. Victor had killed him. She'd helped make it happen by pulling Victor's attention, by firing shots that changed the equation. She'd participated in someone's death. "I think I'm going to be sick." Victor guided her to sit, his hand gentle on the back of her neck, pushing her head down between her knees. "Breathe. Just breathe." Behind them, Marcus was on his phone, calling in cleanup crews and medical support and all the machinery that came after violence. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police, which meant they had minutes at most before this turned into an official crime scene. "We need to go," Marcus said, wincing as he stood. "Now, before this gets complicated." "The center," Nora said suddenly. "Caleb's people? Already handled." Marcus showed her his phone. "I had a team move in the moment shooting started. Everyone's safe. Buildings secure." Victor helped Nora to her feet. "Can you walk?" "Yeah, I'm okay." She wasn't. Not even close. But she could walk, and that would have to be enough. They left through the same side entrance they'd used to enter, Marcus's people materializing from the shadows to cover their exit. 3 cars were waiting. Victor put Nora in the first one with Marcus, then leaned in through the window. "I need to handle this. Make sure the narrative is controlled before the police start asking questions, but I'll meet you at the house in 2 hours. Victor, I promise. 2 hours. Then this is done." He kissed her, quick and desperate, then was gone. The safe house was the one upstate, the one with the nursery. Marcus drove despite his wound, refusing to let anyone else behind the wheel until a doctor had checked Nora over and confirmed she was physically unharmed. Mentally, emotionally, that was a different story. She sat in the kitchen where she and Victor had shared coffee just days ago, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun rise over the frozen lake. Her hand still shook when she tried to hold her mug. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Caleb falling, saw Marcus taking the bullet meant for her. Saw Victor's face when he realized she'd put herself in danger. A car door slammed outside. Footsteps on the porch. Then Victor was there, looking exhausted and blood-stained but alive. "It's done," he said. "Caleb's people scattered. Half of them are already trying to negotiate deals with the feds. The organization is fractured, but what's left is mine. The old guard is finished." Nora set down her mug. "How many people died tonight?" "4 of Caleb's men. Caleb. No one on our side except injuries." "Because I was there. Because Marcus was there. Because you were reckless and brave and oh..." Victor crossed to her, knelt beside her chair. "You saved my life. Again. You keep saving my life. You saved mine first. In that hospital room 3 years ago, when you held me and told me it would be okay, even though we both knew it wouldn't be. You saved me by coming back, by showing me that grief doesn't have to be the end of everything. I don't feel very heroic." "Good. Neither do I." She touched his face, traced the line of his jaw. "What happens now?" "Now we rebuild. The organization, our lives, everything." Victor took her hand, pressed it against his chest where his heart beat steady and strong. "I'm done with the violence, Nora. What happened tonight, that was the last time. I'm accelerating the transition to full legitimacy. Everything that can't be made legal, I'm shutting down or selling off. And I'm establishing a foundation." "What kind of foundation?" "One that helps families dealing with pregnancy loss, counseling, medical support, financial assistance, everything we wished we'd had when we needed it." His voice roughened. "I want to turn what happened to us into something that helps other people survive the same nightmare. I want Bee's legacy to be that she made the world gentler for families like ours." Tears streamed down Nora's face. "The Beacon Foundation." "What?" "That's what we call it. The Beacon Foundation. Because when you're drowning in grief, you need a light to guide you home." Victor's face crumpled. He buried his head in her lap, and she felt his shoulders shake with sobs he'd been holding back for 3 years. She held him, ran her fingers through his hair, and let herself cry with him, for their daughter who never breathed, for the marriage that had broken under unbearable weight, for the people they'd been and the people they'd had to become, for everything lost and everything still possible. When the tears finally stopped, they sat together watching the sun climb higher, burning off the morning fog. "I love you," Victor said quietly. "I never stopped, not even when I tried. Not even when I became someone I thought you couldn't love back." "I love you too, all of you, Ethan and Victor both, because they're the same person, just carrying different weights. Can we do this? Really do this? Start over?" Nora thought about it, about the violence and the danger and the impossible choices that came with Victor's world, about the grief they shared and the future they might build from its ashes. "I don't know if we can start over," she said finally. "Too much has happened, but maybe we can start again. Different people, same love, building something new. I'd like that." "So would I." He stood, offered her his hand. "Come with me. I want to show you something." She let him lead her upstairs to the nursery. The room was exactly as they'd left it, preserved, perfect, heartbreaking. Victor crossed to the dresser, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Nora's breath caught. Her wedding ring, the one she'd left behind when she signed the divorce papers. "I kept it," Victor said. "Couldn't bring myself to get rid of it. It felt like throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me." "Victor, I'm not asking you to marry me again. Not yet. We have too much to work through first, too much rebuilding to do. But someday when we're both ready, when we've proven to ourselves that this can work, I want to ask you properly. Not as Ethan or as Victor, but as whoever I become when I'm with you. The best version of myself." Nora took the ring, held it up to the light. It was simple, elegant, exactly what she'd wanted when they'd picked it out all those years ago. "Ask me now," she said. Victor's eyes widened. "What?" "Ask me now. We've already done this the traditional way. We've already had the fairy tale wedding and the happy beginning. Let's do it differently this time. Honest and messy and real." "Nora, are you sure?" "No, but I'm sure that I love you, and I'm sure that life is too short and too uncertain to wait for the perfect moment. So ask me." Victor took the ring from her hand, held it between them. His eyes were bright with tears and hope, and something that looked like coming home. Nora Hale, will you marry me? Again. As the people we are now, carrying the scars we've earned, building the future we choose. No illusions, no guarantees, just two people who survived hell and decided love was worth fighting for anyway. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, just like it always had. They kissed in the nursery surrounded by the ghost of their daughter, and it felt like both an ending and a beginning, the closing of one chapter and the tentative start of another. Downstairs, Marcus cleared his throat politely. Sir? The attorney is on the line, says it's urgent regarding the federal cooperation agreement. Victor glanced at Nora and she nodded. Go, I'll be here. Promise? Promise. She watched him go, then turned back to the nursery. Slowly, carefully, she began to pack things away. Not to erase B, but to make space for what came next. The mobile went into a box, carefully wrapped. The books, the elephant, the tiny clothes they'd bought too hopefully. But she left one thing out. A photograph in a simple frame taken during Nora's second trimester. Victor's hand on her barely there belly, both of them smiling like they'd won the lottery. That stayed, a reminder of who they'd been and what they'd loved and why any of this mattered. The months that followed were chaos of a different kind. Victor coordinated with federal prosecutors, providing evidence that dismantled the last remnants of the old organization. Arrests rippled through the city's underworld. Some of Caleb's surviving loyalists fled. Others made deals. Through it all, Victor kept his word. No more violence, no more shortcuts. Just the hard, slow work of building something legitimate. The Beacon Foundation launched on what would have been B's third birthday. A small ceremony, attended by the people who mattered most. Marissa from the community center. Marcus, recovered from his wound and now Victor's head of security for the foundation. A handful of Victor's people who'd believed in the vision when it would have been easier to run. And Nora, standing beside Victor as he cut the ribbon, her hand in his. This foundation, Victor said to the small crowd, exists because my wife and I lost our daughter. Because we learned what it means to grieve without support, to navigate a system that wasn't built for our kind of loss. We can't bring her back, but we can make sure that other families have the resources and compassion we wish we'd had. His voice broke on the last words, but he pushed through. B. Hale lived for 9 months in her mother's body. She never drew breath, never opened her eyes, never got to be the extraordinary person we know she would have become. But her legacy starts today. In every family we help, every parent we support, every child who grows up knowing their sibling mattered even though they never met them. That's B. That's how she changes the world. Nora couldn't speak, could only lean into Victor's side as the crowd applauded, as people came forward to shake their hands and share their own stories of loss. The foundation's first office was modest, 3 rooms in a building Victor had renovated in the same neighborhood as Nora's community center. But it was theirs, built on grief and hope in equal measure. They remarried in spring, no big ceremony, no elaborate plans, just a judge in a courtroom with Marcus and Marissa as witnesses. Nora wore a simple dress, Victor wore a suit. They exchanged the same vows they'd spoken years ago, but this time they understood what the words meant, for better or worse, in sickness and health, till death do us part. They'd already survived the worse, the sickness, the part where death had touched them. Now they were choosing to believe in the better, the health, the living. The reception was pizza in their apartment, the new one they'd gotten together, bigger than Nora's old place but not as imposing as Victor's estate. A compromise like everything else in their rebuilt life. Happy? Victor asked as they sat on the floor surrounded by empty boxes, eating straight from the container. Yeah, I think I am. You think? I'm terrified, she admitted, that we'll fall apart again, that the past will come back, that happiness is just the universe luring us into letting our guard down. Me too. He set down his pizza, took her hand. But I'm choosing to believe we're stronger this time, that we've been through the fire and come out tempered instead of broken. What if we're wrong? Then we'll survive it together, just like we survived everything else. Nora kissed him, tasting tomato sauce and hope. Okay, together. Life settled into a rhythm. Victor ran the foundation and his remaining legitimate businesses. Nora expanded her work at the community center while consulting for Beacon. They had dinner together most nights, fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to do dishes, made love like people who knew how precious and temporary everything was. It wasn't perfect. Victor still had nightmares about the warehouse, about Caleb, about the violence he'd left behind. Nora still had days where grief ambushed her, where she'd see a child who looked like Bea might have and had to excuse herself to cry in the bathroom. But they had each other, and slowly, carefully, that became enough. 2 years after the wedding, Nora missed her period. She didn't tell Victor, not right away. The test could be wrong. Her body could be playing tricks. She couldn't survive getting his hopes up only to crush them again. But the second test was positive, and the third. And when she finally went to the doctor, trembling with fear and hope in equal measure, they confirmed it. 8 weeks pregnant. She told Victor that night over dinner. No fanfare, no elaborate reveal. Just 3 words that changed everything. I'm pregnant. He dropped his fork, stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. What? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. I saw the doctor today. There's a heartbeat. Victor's face went through a dozen emotions at once. Joy, terror, hope, fear, love so intense it was almost painful to witness. Are you sure? As sure as I can be. And how are you feeling? Terrified, excited, afraid to hope this is real. He came around the table, knelt beside her chair, put his hand on her belly, even though there was nothing to feel yet. We're going to be okay. All 3 of us. I promise. You can't promise that. I know, but I'm promising anyway. The pregnancy was monitored closely. Every appointment felt like holding their breath, waiting for disaster. But week after week, the baby grew. Healthy, strong, determined. At 20 weeks, they learned they were having a girl. Bea would have wanted a sister, Nora whispered, staring at the ultrasound image. Yeah, she would have. The nursery at the upstate house became a working room again. Victor painted the walls himself, a pale lavender this time. Nora assembled the crib, insisting she was strong enough, letting Victor hover anxiously nearby. They didn't talk about the fear, didn't need to. It was there in every careful movement, every extra doctor's visit, every moment they touched Nora's growing belly and silently begged the universe not to take this from them too. At 32 weeks, Nora woke up bleeding. The hospital, the monitors, the controlled panic of medical professionals who knew their history, it was all horrifyingly familiar. Victor held her hand so tightly his knuckles went white, both of them rigid with terror. It's okay, the doctor said after an examination that felt like hours. Slight placental separation, but the baby's stable. We're keeping you overnight for observation, but this isn't the same situation. You're both going to be fine. Nora sobbed with relief. Victor pressed his face to her shoulder and shook. They made it to 37 weeks. Full term. Healthy. Then labor started naturally, progressing exactly like the textbook said it should. 22 hours later, Nora held her daughter for the first time. And this time, the baby cried. The sound was the most beautiful thing Nora had ever heard. Loud, indignant, furiously alive. Victor cut the cord with shaking hands, then collapsed into the chair beside the bed, tears streaming down his face. She's here, Nora whispered, studying the tiny face, the perfect fingers, the fierce scowl. She's really here. What do we name her? Victor asked. They discussed names for months, made lists, and debated and changed their minds a dozen times. But looking at their daughter now, Nora knew. Beatrice, she said. We name her Beatrice. B, for short, after her sister, after the foundation, after the light that guided us through the dark. Are you sure? I'm sure, she's B. She's been B all along. Little B, because she was little, barely 6 pounds of fury and determination, latched on to nurse like a champion. The nurses praised her strong reflexes. The pediatrician declared her perfect. And when visiting hours came, Marcus arrived with flowers and a stuffed elephant that matched the one in the preserved photograph. Thought she might need one of her own, he said gruffly. Thank you, Marcus. For everything. Just doing my job, ma'am. Your job doesn't include taking bullets for people. Maybe not. But my family does. And you two, you're family now. Victor clasped his shoulder, the gesture saying everything words couldn't. They brought Ba home to the upstate house. The nursery that had been empty for so long finally held the sounds of life. Crying, cooing, the tiny noises babies make in their sleep. Nora spent hours in the rocking chair, Bee in her arms, reading the same book she'd imagined reading years ago. Victor would come in during the 2 a.m. feedings and sit beside them, his hand on Nora's shoulder, both of them watching their daughter like she might disappear if they looked away. "I'm scared," Nora admitted one night, her voice barely audible over Bee's soft breathing. "Me too. What if something happens? What if we lose her too? Then we'll survive it, together, just like we survived everything else." Victor kissed her temple. "But I don't think we will. I think she's here to stay. I think she's tougher than both of us combined." As if in agreement, Bee yawned, stretched, and went back to sleep. The foundation thrived. In its third year, Beacon helped over 500 families navigate pregnancy loss, providing counseling, medical advocacy, and financial support. They hosted support groups, trained medical professionals on compassionate care, and lobbied for better research funding. The community center expanded too, with Victor's continued support. More programs, more staff, more families getting the help they needed to rebuild their lives. And through it all, Nora and Victor learned to be parents, to navigate sleepless nights and growth spurts and the 1,000 tiny disasters that came with raising a child, to laugh at the chaos, to cry when it got overwhelming, to hold each other and remember they'd survived worse. On Bee's first birthday, they threw a party at the upstate house. Just family and close friends, nothing elaborate. Marcus taught her to clap. Marissa brought a cake shaped like an elephant. And Victor stood in the doorway of the nursery, the one that had been empty for so long, and watched his daughter destroy wrapping paper with single-minded determination. Nora found him there, wrapped her arms around his waist. "You okay?" "More than okay. I'm happy, really, genuinely happy. I didn't think that was possible anymore. It almost wasn't. But it is. Because of you. Because you refused to give up on me when I'd given up on myself." She turned in his arms, looked up at him. "We saved each other. That's what people who love each other do." "Yeah, I guess it is." They kissed, gentle and unhurried, while their daughter laughed at something only babies found funny. Later that night, after guests had left and Bee was asleep, Nora and Victor sat on the back porch watching stars emerge over the lake. The same lake they'd stared at during their darkest moments, when everything felt impossible. "Do you ever think about her?" Nora asked quietly. "Our first Bee?" "Every day. Not in a way that hurts anymore, but in a way that remembers, that honors what she meant. Do you think she'd be proud of us? Of what we built?" Victor pulled Nora closer, his chin resting on top of her head. "I think she'd be amazed we survived. And I think she'd love her little sister. I tell little Bee about her sometimes, when we're alone, about the big sister she'll never meet but who loves her anyway. What do you say? That she's watching, that she's proud, that she's the reason we fight so hard to be good parents, good people, because we owe it to her to make her legacy matter. That's beautiful. It's true." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd been broken and somehow found a way to heal. Not completely, some wounds never fully closed, but enough. Enough to build a life. Enough to love again. Enough to believe in tomorrow. 5 years later, on a spring morning that smelled like new grass and possibility, Victor stood in front of a crowd at the Beacon Foundation's new headquarters. The building was beautiful, glass and light and open spaces, designed to feel welcoming rather than institutional. "When my wife and I started this foundation," he said, his voice steady, "we did it because we knew what it meant to grieve without support, to navigate a loss that the world didn't know how to acknowledge. Today, we're opening our 5th location, expanding our reach to serve families across 3 states. We've helped thousands of people survive the unsurvivable. And we're just getting started." Nora stood beside him, little Bee on her hip, watching her husband speak about their daughter with love instead of only grief. The crowd applauded, and Victor reached for Nora's hand, squeezing gently. After the ceremony, they walked through the new building, little Bee demanding to be put down so she could run ahead, her laughter echoing off the walls. "We did it," Nora said softly. We actually did it. Did what? Survived. Built something beautiful from something terrible. Became the people we needed to be. Victor stopped, turned to face her fully. Do you have regrets? About any of it? Nora thought about the question. About the loss and the pain and the violence and the impossible choices. About divorce papers signed in grief and rings exchanged in hope. About the man who'd been Ethan and became Victor and was somehow both and neither. No, she said finally. I don't regret any of it. Because all of it, every awful, heartbreaking moment, led us here. To this building, this life, this family, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Not even to have our first bee back. That's not a fair question. I know, but I'm asking anyway. Nora watched Little Bee investigate a water fountain with intense concentration, her dark hair falling in her eyes just like Victor's did, her stubborn determination pure Nora. If I could have both, she said quietly, I would, in a heartbeat. But we don't get both. We get the life we have, built from the pieces we were given. And this life, messy and imperfect and hard-won, it's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. Victor pulled her close, kissed her forehead. Yeah, it is. Little Bee came running back, demanding to be picked up again, already talking about the playroom she'd discovered, and the cookies someone had promised, and a dozen other things that mattered intensely in a 5-year-old's world. They left the building together, a family shaped by loss but defined by love. Victor and Nora, hands intertwined, while Bee chattered between them about everything and nothing. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, beautiful, fleeting, perfect in its impermanence, just like everything else worth having. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them looked back at the darkness they'd survived. They looked forward toward the light they'd built together, and they walked into it hand in hand. Not as the people they'd been, not even as the people they'd become, but as the people they were still becoming, together, always together. The ghosts they carried would always be part of them. The grief, the loss, the daughter they'd never raise. But those ghosts didn't haunt them anymore. They walked beside them, quiet and gentle, a reminder of where they'd been and why they kept fighting. For the daughter who never breathed, they'd built a foundation that gave breath to thousands. For the marriage that had shattered, they'd forged something stronger in the broken places. For the people they'd been forced to become, they'd found a way back to the people they wanted to be. And for the life they'd almost lost, they'd created one worth living. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.